All right, so here are the answers to those monitoring progress questions. So check and make sure you got those correct. And next, we're going to talk about multiplying complex numbers. So when we're multiplying something that looks like this normally, we just distribute, right? X goes to everything and 3 goes to everything. And we're going to do the same thing for our complex numbers. So we're going to take our A, it's going to distribute to C and to DI. So we have A times C plus A times DI. And then our BI is going to distribute to C and DI. So we'll have BI times C and BD times I squared, right? I times I is I squared. So let's see. So we have AC plus ADI, and then I'm just going to reorder this so it's BCI. Now I squared, we know, is -1, right? I squared is I times I, and we know that I times I is equal to -1. So that means what we really have is AC plus ADI plus BCI minus BD. So if we just put those together, we have our real numbers, AC minus BD. And then our imaginary parts, we have ADI plus BCI. Okay, now if you really wanted to, you could memorize this pattern, but usually it's more practical to just distribute for whatever numbers you're working with. Okay, so let's do an example. So for part A, we have 4i times -6 plus I. So again, we're just going to distribute our 4i right in. So we have 4i times -6. So that's going to be -24i, right? 4 times -6 is -24. Then we're going to have 4, and I times I is that I squared. So we have our -24i plus 4, and I squared we know is -1. So -24i minus 4. And then if we want to put this in standard form, we would just have the -4 first and the imaginary part second. So that would be our answer to part A. Now for part B. For B, we have 9 minus 2i times -4 plus 7i. So again, we're just going to distribute. So our 9 to -4 is going to give us -36. 9 to 7i, that's going to give us 63i. 9 times 7 is 63. Now we're going to distribute our -2i. So -2i times -4. Negative times a negative is a positive. 2 times 4 is 8. And then we have our I. -2i times 7i. It's going to be -14i squared. Okay, so we have -36. Now we have 63i plus 8i. And that's going to be 71i, right? Those are like terms, so we can combine them. And then -14i squared, well, we know that I squared is -1. So really, we're going to have plus 14. Okay, so that means we have -36 plus 14. And -36 plus 14 is -22. And we have our plus 71i. And that would be our answer to B. Okay, now pause your video and try these monitoring progress questions. And then when you press play, I will go over the answers. Okay, so for 12, you should have got 30. For 13, you should have got 1 plus 8i. And for 14, 16 plus 2i. Okay, so the last thing we're going to talk about is complex conjugates. So a conjugate is when we have a plus bi and a minus bi. Those are conjugates of the other. They just have the opposite signs. Okay, so when we multiply these, let's multiply this out. So we have a times a is a squared, a times negative bi, negative abi. And we have bi times a, so plus abi. And then bi times negative bi, so minus b squared, I squared. Okay, so we have a squared minus abi plus abi. Those are actually going to cancel out. And we just have minus b squared, I squared. And we know that I squared is negative 1. So really we have a squared plus b squared. So the product of complex conjugates will be a real number because our imaginary part will cancel out. Okay, so let's do an example with a complex number. So we have 5 plus 2i, and we want to multiply by its complex conjugate. So it's going to be the same, except it's going to be minus. So we have 5 minus 2i. And now you can do this two ways. We can distribute, or we can use the pattern. So first we're going to distribute. So 5 times 5 is 25. 5 times negative 2i is negative 10i. 2i times 5 is plus 10i. And 2i times negative 2i is negative 4i squared. Okay, so our negative 10i and 10i cancel. We have 25 minus 4 times negative 1, right? I squared is negative 1. So we get 25 plus 4, which is equal to 9. Now you can also use this pattern if you would like to memorize the pattern, a squared plus b squared. So our a, in this case, for 5 plus 2i, our a would be 5, and b is 2. So a squared, we'd have 5 squared plus b squared, which is 2 squared. So we're going to get 25 plus 4, which if you notice is what we got right there, and it will equal 29. Okay, and so that's the answer for that multiplying the complex conjugate. So again, pause your video and try these monitoring progress questions, and then I'll give you the answers. Okay, so you should have gotten 2, 65, and 13. Okay, and that's all we have for 4.6.